We are in front of the Israeli School, Universal Practical Knowledge, the Philadelphia Division, here at 3226 Cheltenham Avenue in Philadelphia. We're standing in front of the school right now, getting a description of the 12 tribe sign that's been painted by one of the brothers that was in the school: Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Gad, Reuben, Naphtali, Asher, Issachar. Those are the 12 tribes of Israel.
Shalom. Shalom. You've been waiting for this day, so this day has finally come. A lot of you have been wondering where this knowledge that you've been hearing is coming from, and the powerful truth that you've been hearing, how this was established. Well, we finally were able to arrange for the priests to come down from New York and spend some time with us. And I'd like to introduce them if I can. These are some great brothers. We're very glad to have them with us. We want to make them feel as warm as possible, because this is their work and the extension of their work and what they've laid down some time ago. I'd like to introduce, first of all, priest and six-shield general, fourth in command in the nation of Israel, Lahab. I'd like to salute this brother. Macho. Barak. Yeshabim, which means sit. And I'm going to turn it over now to priest General Lahab.
Water, brother. I'd like to say this, starting off, we're very impressed at your school here, and we're very impressed to see that the brothers and sisters in Philadelphia think enough of the Most High and the Bible and the truth and your nationality to be a part of this, because most of the brothers and sisters are running from the truth.
All right, Shalom Israel, Yahweh Shemir Shabbat to the brothers, Yahweh Shemar Atham Bashimir Shad to the sisters. I'm just going to test the sound really quick. Salakia for the time. Just having some technical difficulties with my computer. Okay, the sound is good. All right, Salakia again. Shalom, Yahweh Shemir Shabbat to the brothers, Yahweh Shemar Atham Bashimir Shad to the sisters. Priest and Officer Sharyuwan and the Commanding General Yohana. All right, the water for bearing with me. We're going to get this truth out, okay? Got a lot of good information tonight. All right, this is Monday night's history class. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. All right, share these classes, get this truth out. And just big ups to Commanding General Yohana, all the generals, the heavy hitters tonight. They're going to be live on Black Watch. Make sure you don't miss that. Okay, if you're Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous, you are missing out if you're not tuned in to Black Watch. Okay, it's an excellent show for our people. So tonight, Monday night history class. Shout out to Kwamada in the chat, Aisha Banat Yahawada. All right, the water for tuning in. So again, this is Monday night history class. All right, so like 1 second. Okay, so again, Monday night history class. Tonight's class, we're gonna get a little bit on the history of Puerto Ricans. Okay, and it's an important topic because for too long, blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we've been void of an identity. Okay, let me pull up my scriptures real quick. Okay, we've been a people void of our identity. Okay, we're people who, we have forgotten who we are as a people. If you ask a black man today, Hispanic brother or indigenous brother, who he is, where he comes from, what his history is, he is going to say, I do not know. I don't know my father. I don't know my grandfather. I don't know where they're from. I don't know their history. I don't know, where we come from. And that's because, these curses that have plagued our people. This is how you know that blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous are the children of God, because we fit every single prophecy that is in this book. Everything that the Most High said would happen to us for disobeying Him has happened to us as a people. You read through Deuteronomy chapter 28, you'll see that, blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we fit all those curses. Every punishment that the Most High said would fall upon us has fallen upon us. All right. This is Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 4. It says, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. The Lord gave blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous a heritage, a culture, an identity. An angel came to Sarah and told her that 2 nations of people are in your womb. And those 2 nations that are in your womb are going to produce 2 manner of people. 2 different nations with 2 different mannerisms, 2 different types of people. They're going to act differently. And this was promised to Abraham through his seed, that his seed would be blessed and he would have a seed of many nations, who today are the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. You understand? That's the heritage that the Lord gave us. The heritage that He gave to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. And the Most High said in Jeremiah 17 and 4 that we would discontinue from that heritage. That's why if you ask a black, Hispanic, or indigenous brother today, who are you? They're going to say, I don't know. And that's a good answer. That's a good thing if you're black, Hispanic, or indigenous, because it's a way to identify yourself and who you are in this Bible. You got 17 different nations that the Most High created coming out of Noah. 17 different nations, and these nations of people today all know who they are. They all know who they descend from. You look historically, at a nation, for example, like the Romans, they'll tell you their ancestors were Idumeans. Idumea is a biblical name for Edomites, or Esau, the nation of Edom. The Romans know their history. The blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we don't know who we are. We discontinued from our heritage. And what's beautiful about the ISUPK is that in 1969, the ISUPK was established. The ISUPK was established with the knowledge of the Bible, the knowledge of all the nations on the earth, who they are, who they descend from, where they come from, including the nation of Israel, which nobody else on earth knows. Even those Jewish people over in Israel, you try asking one of those Jewish people, one of those small hats, where is the tribe of Manasseh? Where is the tribe of Ephraim? Where is the tribe of Naphtali, Zebulun? They're going to say, I don't know. because they don't know where these tribes are. They don't know where these different nations are. And Christopher Columbus was, a man, searching out these 12 tribes. He's reading the book of Ezra's or not the book of, the book of Ezra's in the Apocrypha, and he's seeing, wait a minute, there's more parts of the earth that nobody has seen yet, that nobody has dwelled in. I think the book of Ezra says there's 6 parts, 6 lands, 6 dry lands and different bodies of water. And in the known world at that time, they had 5 parts. I can't remember if it was 6 or 7 parts. I'm just paraphrasing. But Christopher Columbus is looking in the book of Ezra, noticing that, there's another part of land that hasn't been inhabited yet. Not that he was aware of, or not that the known world was aware of. And so he's reading the book of Ezra, and he's like, wait a minute. He's seeing that these are the 10 tribes, that traveled over water to a land that no man had dwelt before. And Christopher Columbus is thinking, wait a minute. Is this where the lost tribes of Israel could be? You look up, historical facts about Christopher Columbus, and you got to ask yourself, why did Christopher Columbus travel to the New World with only a Hebrew interpreter? Why would, if he thought he was going to run into a different people, or if he wasn't going to run into any people at all, why would he bring a Hebrew scholar with him? Why would he bring, somebody who knew how to translate Hebrew, who understood Hebrew as a language? Why would he bring a Hebrew interpreter with him? You understand? So Christopher Columbus comes to the New World, and, he starts meeting these people that are living in the land. They love to tell you that they're the first people here, that they discovered America. Bullshit. People were living here. And who were those people? The 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. And the ISUPK being established in 1969, we understood where those people were because it's all throughout the Bible. The people who would, lose their identity. People who would forget who they were. You know what I mean? People who had a culture, a very beautiful culture. And when they came over here, seeing the indigenous people inside America, they're looking at these people who, have all these different separation laws, for a woman who's on her menstrual. They're seeing the different ways they carry themselves as a people. You know what I mean? Right down to dressing with garments with borders of blue and fringes all over their clothing, their garments. And as time has gone on and continues to go on, more and more historical facts and archaeology, has been found, proving that we are the children of the book, proving that blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous are the children of the book. And we're gonna go through, one of the findings that is a recent finding here in America. All right. Hey, for water, Carolyn, for saying you can't hear. Let me test the sound one more time. Or maybe I'll use a different microphone. So this will be with my computer. Okay, the sound is good. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna plug in a different microphone and let's see if that All right, I'm just going to change the microphone. Okay, sound check, sound check. Can you hear me any better? Can you hear me any better? Sound check, mic check. Sound check, mic check. Okay, it sounds okay on my side. All right, so yeah, again, so Salaki, we're gonna get into some of that information. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen on an article. Shout out Cap Kataza, you know, a brother who does so much work in this school, you know, and has taught the nation a lot about these different historical artifacts. Let me get my share or my screen shared. I'm gonna go through an article on speaking on the 800 stones found in Puerto Rico. I believe they're called the Father Nazario stones. Okay. We'll read through this article, and then I got a video on this. Oh, what's going on? Okay, we're good. How do we keep doing this? Oh, it's lucky. Where'd that go? Okay. So this is a article from a website called firekeepersinternational.org. Not gonna let me get rid of that. Okay. Well, we'll rock out with this. We'll do the best we can. This is so again, this is an article from firekeepersinternational.org, and it's titled "The 800 Ancient Stones with Hebrew Writing in Puerto Rico Authenticated?" Question mark. And why is it saying authenticated? Question mark. Because historical, or what they would call today all modern day scholars, you know, you ask modern day scholars, they'd all love to come to the agreement that, you know, these stones aren't verified, or they're not you know, proven to be true. I believe they say that they have some, you know, question marks on the validity of these stones. Okay. Because when Father Nazario had first found these stones, he had a lot of claims, you know, saying how these stones have Hebrew writing. You know, they say things like the tribe of Ephraim on it. You know what I mean? All the different findings Father Nazario, you know, had came out with, and different scholars, you know, came together and said, you know, basically this is bullshit. You understand? And so what we're going to be reading right now, you know, or why they're asking the question right now, have these stones been verified, or have these stones been authenticated, is because more information has been released on them. All right. It says a remnant of ancient stones 20 of 800 made its way halfway across the world, solving a 3,500-year-old mystery. What did these stones whisper about the pre-Columbian indigenous people of the island of Puerto Rico? After rigorous academic testing, anthropologists, historians, academics, and millions of Puerto Ricans finally have scientific evidence that reveals the language of the stones. Now, why is this important? You know what I mean? We've been told so many different things regarding our history here inside America. You know, the history of the Taino Indians, the Arawak Indians. You understand? The blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous here in America and all throughout the world. We've been told so many different things regarding our history. You know, where we come from, who we are, what language we spoke, what gods we serve. And to find a piece of evidence, you know, showing what language we had, you know, would be such a beautiful thing for people who have been colonized, the people who had their language beaten out of them. You know what I mean? The people who were, you know, our indigenous brothers, you know, were brought under things like boarding schools and were beat anytime they spoke their native language. Okay? It says, growing up in the mountains of Borokin, Puerto Rico, my grandfather told me about some very unique stones, which were part of our ancient Taino Indian history. It says, these rare stones were in the care of one of our greatest principal chiefs, Kakike Aguabana. Salakia, to my Taino brothers. My Spanish is not good. It says, who when Columbus stumbled across our Taino people in 1492 was the principal chief of my home island of Borican, Puerto Rico. Okay? And so, you know, something that's a very sad thing is, you know, we send our children to these public schools, and we have our oppressor teach us our history. Okay? We have our oppressor teach us our history as if, you know, this is the word of God itself. You know what I mean? That this is the greatest education that we could ever come across. Meanwhile, you have your grandfather telling you a history of your people. These are the things we should hold on to. You understand? All throughout the Bible, it speaks upon the character of Esau. One of the main characters of Esau is that he is a liar. He is deceptive. He is the devil that the Bible speaks of. He's been a murderer and a liar from the beginning. That's his character. That's his nature. So why would you trust those people, you understand, to teach you your history? Why would you trust those people to teach you your culture? You have your grandfather right here telling you about your history. Okay? Which is so much more valuable than any piece of information you could have. It says in the book of Deuteronomy, let me pull that scripture up, to ask your fathers, okay? Ask your forefathers. Pull that scripture up really quick. It says in Deuteronomy 32:7, it says to remember the days of old. Okay, this is a history class. The ISUPK history class, this is right out of the Bible, right out of your history book. Deuteronomy 32:7 says, remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy fathers, and he will show thee. Why is that important? It's not saying that to ask the white man. It's not saying to ask your oppressor. It's not saying to go to the Chinese man for, your identity, for your culture, for your history, for your wisdom. It says to ask thy fathers. If you're Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous and you don't know who your fathers are, you don't know who your ancestors are, you're not going to know where to look. Your forefathers, are great men, mighty men. We have the Bible, which is the most sold book on the known earth. No other book has ever been sold as many copies as the Bible. You have all these different religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, all the 4,000 different denominations, trying to hold claim to these records, this Bible. And in this book, we have our forefathers. Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous, your forefathers are Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Obadiah, Moses, Noah. You understand? Christ. These are our people. These are our forefathers. When we go and look to the book of Deuteronomy, we're reading knowledge that our forefathers gave us. Okay? We're reading Deuteronomy. This is coming from Moses, our ancestor, our knowledge. These are things that we got to hold on to as a people. If you find any, valuable piece of information from your father, your mother, your grandparents, ask them about their history. Ask them what it was like growing up in America. Ask them the different things that they went through. You understand? I'm a young man, and I can tell you, growing up, my grandmother knew who the devil was. You understand? Even though she didn't have the wisdom of the ISUPK. You know what I mean? They tried to teach us Christianity and instill that in our family. And even in doing so, she would tell you that the white man is a devil, that our oppressor is a devil. There's lots of knowledge that we can gain from our ancestors. Okay? And Salaki, bear with me. I'm doing this off a laptop. It's been having a lot of technical difficulties today, but we're going to keep going through this. All right, so this brother was asking his grandfather about these stones. Okay, his grandfather had found some very unique stones. It says knowledge of these stones first came to light when a very sick Taino woman who had tried everything from indigenous herbal remedies to ceremonies lay on her deathbed, compelled to tell a secret her family had carried for generations. She sent runners to find someone in the church who would listen. Why she chose the church, we'll never know. But a monk named Jose Maria Nazario Cancel came to her bedside. What this elder revealed to this monk changed the historical narrative of our precious island. There in her tiny bohio, which is a thatched roof home, the monk interceded for the old woman's healing. Then she told him her family secret, a secret that went back to the time of Kakise Agwabana, the principal chief of Borican, the Taino Indian name for Puerto Rico, which means the house of the great and valiant Lord. You know what I mean? Which is a beautiful name. A lot of these names that we have on these islands, have such a deep meaning. I was looking up the meaning of the Bahamas. What was that word again? I can't. It's off the top of my head. I can't remember what Bahamas meant. But you look up different things like what is it? I'll bring up Jamaica because that's where my parents were from. Jamaica meant wood and water, which was Zamaka, which I find interesting because in the Hebrew, you know, the word for wood was itaza, and the Hebrew word for water is masha, itaza masha. And then you look at that word for wood and water, Jamaican, you know what I mean? They said zamaka. It's very similar. You know, different things like in Brazil, you know, the Hebrew word for iron is barzal. You look in that land of Brazil, it's very rich in iron. Okay? These words, you know, which you go back even far enough, every word or every language today comes from the Hebrew. It all comes from the original tongue, the Lashon Kodash, the original tongue. So every language on earth today will have different similarities to the Hebrew. Okay? But specifically Puerto Rico, you understand, these are people who came to this, you know, new world with a culture, with an identity. You read in Ezra, it said that when they got here, they kept traveling, I believe it says they kept traveling north, or they kept traveling further into the land so that they could be left alone to worship their God. Okay, these are people who came over with a culture, with an identity. And you'll see all throughout the 10 tribes, okay, the 10 tribes that were over here, a very rich history that comes straight from the Bible. Okay, this where was that word? They said the Taino Indian name for Puerto Rico, which means the house of the great and valiant Lord. You know what I mean? There's so much traces of our identity and our history all over America. It says, her secret revealed where to find a hidden stash of stone figurines inscribed with strange symbols and carvings of an ancient people that some called the Habaro, who had lived in the mountains of the island and still have descendants who call themselves by this name to this day. Nazario had been educated at the University of Salamanca. His studies had included ancient languages, and he was amazed at what he saw. Okay, so Nazario, the brother who looked over these stones or looked over these findings, he had been educated at the University of Salamanca, and he was educated in ancient languages. You know what I mean? Or he was educated in many things, one of them being ancient languages. And he was amazed at what he saw. After comparing the writing on these stones to others from around the world, he came to his conclusion. This writing was a form of ancient Hebrew. Ancient Hebrew. Yeah, I mean, you ask the Puerto Ricans who they are today, they don't know their history. Ask a Puerto Rican if in their history, you know what I mean, they were speaking a form of ancient Hebrew. That's not something that I've ever heard before. The first time you hear information like this is when you come through the doors of the ISUPK. It said this writing was a form of ancient Hebrew. I remember having a conversation with my uncle one time in the world, and I think I was around 20 years old, 20, 21 years old, and he was, you know, damn near shitting on Christianity. And one of the things he had brought up, I had never forgot this. I remember him asking me, well, have you ever wondered what God our ancestors served before slavery? And I kind of looked at him sideways because, you know, in Jamaica, we knew about the good ship Jesus. that good ship Jesus would come to the shores of Jamaica, and that meant run to the mountains. That's what it meant for our people. And so my uncle had a disdain for Christianity. And he had asked me, what God did we serve before we were colonized? I kind of looked at him sideways and said, I don't know. I have no idea. It's not something I'd ever thought about before. And then he asked me, well, what language did we speak? You know what I mean? I looked at him again. I said, I have no idea. It's not something I'd ever thought about before. That's the typical response of a Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous. We don't know what our language was. We don't know what God we serve. We don't know our culture. You know what I mean? If we did nothing but listen to white people, they'd have us believe, we were uncivilized, swinging off trees, naked in the middle of Africa somewhere. You know what I mean? Taught our indigenous and Hispanic brothers that they were savages, uncivilized, had no civil way of living or running a society. They'd have you believe that, indigenous people couldn't survive without the white man coming over here. Okay, I might have to get into a class of manifest destiny. You know what I mean? And we'll get more into that. But, again, for him to sit here and find these stones, and he's looking at them saying, this looks like ancient Hebrew. Could you imagine having that knowledge as a Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous brother to say, we found some ancient stones or, ancient pottery, or a cave inscribed with so-and-so, where our people were writing in Hebrew. Our people were writing in ancient Hebrew. That would have every Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous, questioning what they've been taught. Or it might solve this great puzzle. Who were we before colonization? You know what I mean? Who were we before we were so far removed from our culture? This brother found a stone or some stones that had ancient Hebrew on it. It says, because of his religious background, this fueled the possibility that a remnant of the lost tribes of Israel had settled on this island. Could you imagine that? You ask people today, where's the tribe of Ephraim? Where's the tribe of Manasseh? Where's the tribe of Gad, Naphtali? Nobody on earth is going to tell you. A lot of people, and it's such a weird thing, especially Christians. You know what I mean? You ask a Christian, where is the nation of Israel today? You start asking them about the different tribes and different things like this, they're going to say, I have no idea. Imagine that, all the knowledge of the Bible that a Christian claims to have, and you have no idea where God's children are. That is insanity to me. Considering all the different prophecies, that's spoken about in this book, you would think they'd have some idea of where the children of Israel are. You know what I mean? You even go to the timeline of this, they all believe, that the Jews and the Israelites were in Rome. You know what I mean? This is going back 2,000 years ago. Where did the Israelites disappear to within 2,000 years? It's nonsense what they teach inside of Christianity. It says, let's keep going. It says, in 1893, Nazario wrote a short article titled Escritura Aborigen de Carib, Aboriginal writing of the Carib. in which he explained his interpretation of these carvings. After a thorough analysis of the stones and their inscriptions, he dismissed an Arawak Taino language origin, and by 1897 he concluded that the writings were more reminiscent of ancient Hebrew. Okay, so he dismissed that what he found was an Arawak Taino language origin. So he's looking at these stones saying this is not a Taino language. He dismissed that. And he concluded that the writings were more reminiscent of ancient Hebrew. It says, comparing this discovery with the spoken Taino language of this day, Nazario discerned words in the Taino Arawak language that were Semitic in origin and pronunciation, which, if you were to ask, the indigenous people today, ask the Mohawk, or ask the Cherokee, about their languages, ask the Taino Indians about their languages. One of the things that they'll tell you is that their language or their alphabet is characters. They are not letters. Okay, you look at the English language. The English language has letters. Some languages have characters. What is a character? It's a symbol. It's an image. It's a representation of something, which is exactly what the Hebrew is. The Hebrew is made up of characters, right? That first character, the alak, right? It's the symbol of a head. The second character, bayat, the symbol of a house, or the symbol of a tent, right? And it goes on throughout the whole, alphabet. They're all characters. And so he's looking at the Taino language and he's looking at the Hebrew and he's saying, wait a minute, there's some similarities to this Taino language and the ancient Hebrew. There's some similarities to the Taino language and Semitic languages. Imagine telling blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous that, they're Semitic in origin. They're Shemitic in origin. Now all of a sudden, especially you tell a black man or a woman that you're Shemitic, and they start looking in the Bible, they're going to say, wait a minute, I thought we were Hamitic. I thought we were the cursed people of Ham. You know what I mean? That's exactly what Christianity taught blacks, that we were the cursed of Ham. And that's why, we're going through all the slavery that we've gone through. It's a curse to be black. You dumb Negroes following that Mormon religion, it says right in the Book of Mormons that it is a curse to be black. It is a curse to have this bronze or brown skin. You know what I mean? And so we find out that, wait a minute, we have a Shemitic language and origin. You know how many, questions that would raise for a brother or sister who's looking for their identity, who's looking to know more about their history. It's a very beautiful thing to find. So he found these stones saying, wait a minute, the Taino language is Shemitic in origin. It says, and pronunciation. It says, one example is the Taino name for the supreme spirit of spirits, Yahya. By comparison, the God of the monotheistic Hebrew culture is known by the abbreviated form of his sacred name, Yah. Okay? You can't tell me that, you know what I mean, the name Yah isn't used all throughout Israelite culture. Jeremiah, Obadiah, this is all throughout the Bible. Okay? And so the Taino, what did I say? Let me go back. It said the Taino name for the Supreme Spirit is Yahya. Okay, that's in their language. And that starts putting a face to, wait a minute, who is the God that we serve? It says, modern day Taino people say that Cacique Aguabana kept this collection of inscribed stones safeguarded on the island, and they buried them, fearing that the Spanish conquistadors might find them. They remained hidden in the earth for over 400 years until the dying Taino elder Juano Morales told Nazario about the stones or where to find them. So our ancestors, you know what I mean, they hid this archaeology. They hid these stones to safeguard them when the Spanish were coming over, which is a beautiful thing, because, you know, it allows us today to learn more about our history, learn more about our culture. It says it was well known on the island that Juan Morales was the last descendant of Principal Chief Aguabana. Her story is still told among the mountain people in the interior of the island, who still identify as Habaro, a word that in Taino means people of the mountains, but which bears a strange resemblance to the word Hebrew. During the 19th and 20th century, Aguabana's library had been exhibited to the public several times and examined by expert scholars of Nai reputation, who speculated that the writing was a form of Hebrew. So you even had other scholars, you know what I mean, visiting the island looking at this, and they're speculating, saying, could that be Hebrew? Could that be a form of Hebrew? It says many scholars agreed these could not be a forgery. Some even theorized that the writings predated the Mayan and Inca writing system. In 2012, interest gained traction, and by 2019, it had piqued global curiosity in the Middle East. So these stones gained so much curiosity that people are starting to say, wait a minute, what is this? What is this that they found? You know what I mean? Word starts getting out to the Middle East, you know what I mean? And those Amalekites, those fake Jews over there in Israel, you know what I mean, and other parts of the world in the Middle East, they're starting to look at the stones like, wait a minute, is this really a Shemitic language? Is this really Hebrew? Really an ancient form of Hebrew written on these stones? And if it is, we better take a second look at this. It says new tests were done using spectrum. Oh, how do you say this word? Spectrometry and X-ray diffraction in Israel. This fascinating story came to the attention of the Zinman Institute of Archaeology at the University of Haifa. Dr. Iris Groman, Yaroslavsky, did molecular analysis on 20 of these stones. The doctor's result, based on the patina, revealed that these rocks were not forgeries. Okay? So this University of Haifa does a whole bunch of tests on these stones, you know what I mean, to determine the authenticity of these stones. And in doing so, they're doing these tests. And this university is like, these are not forgeries. This is the real thing. This is some real archaeology. Okay? It says the results verified that many scholars had theorized. This added to mounting evidence about the origin of the writings. So now that they're saying, okay, wait a minute, these stones are real. You know what I mean? This is a real archaeological find. we need to take a second look at what's on these writings of these stones. Okay? It says the stones are inscribed in a language script previously unknown to linguists without expertise in Phoenician and Proto-Hebrew. Expert linguists deciphered the writings to the mixture of Hebrew with a little bit of Phoenician and an unknown script. Using carbon-14 tests on the red paint found on the stones, they had been dated to approximately 900 BC. That is time when King David's son Solomon sent out ships from Tarshish throughout the world to collect resources like bronze and gold. Did some of those Hebrew sailors discover this island during their travels? It says, will history be rewritten to include this fascinating new evidence? Were the people who inscribed these ancient stones part of the scattered tribes of Israel as recorded in the Bible? Did Hebrews share their language, traditions, and customs with the native island people? Is that why several Native American tribes from the southeast of Caribbean islands share much of Israel's spirituality found in the Torah? Only time and more testing will tell as this enigmatic hidden history of Boricuan, Puerto Rico unfolds. Okay? And these are exactly the type of questions that it would raise when, you know what I mean, things like this are found on the island. It's like, why are all these, ancient Shemitic language and writings and inscriptions, all over the island of Puerto Rico? You know what I mean? And there's been, other finds in Puerto Rico. There was some caves that they had just recently found in Puerto Rico, where they had Hebrew inscriptions all over the caves. You can't tell me that the ISUPK wasn't right. You know what I mean? Since 1969, saying that we are the children of this book. The Puerto Ricans are the tribe of Ephraim according to the Bible. The ISUPK has this knowledge. You know what I mean? We don't struggle with these questions because we see it clear as day all throughout the scriptures. Genesis, the 49th chapter, tells you about what would befall these tribes in the last days. Okay? So now all these questions kind of, speculating. Why is this being found in Puerto Rico? It says the state of Israel has acknowledged a Hebrew presence in our ancient mountains in times long past. And we, the good and noble people, the Taino, send our warmest regards and blessings to our long-lost cousins. Let me tell you something, Puerto Ricans. Those Jewish bastards inside of Israel are not your cousins. Those people are converts. You look up their history is not lost. You can look up the history of the Byzantine Empire. And you can look up how, they were looking for a religion to convert to so that they wouldn't be slaughtered like everybody else in the known world. You know what I mean? When they're going around forcing Christianity and Islam on people, the Byzantine Empire says we need a religion to convert to, which is exactly what happened. That was around 400, I believe it's around 400 to 600 AD. The Byzantine Empire's history is there. You can look up the records. It was not erased. You can look up the history of the Jewish people in Israel. Ask them where they're from. They'll tell you, we're Polish. Our grandparents were Russian. Our grandparents were Polish. You know what I mean? They have no problem telling you their identity. You know what I mean? And it's all throughout their culture. Different customs of the Polish. They carry that shit on till this day. They are not your cousins. They are not the cousins of the Puerto Ricans. Your cousins are black, Hispanic, and indigenous. That is it. It says, Let me go down a bit. It says, okay, we can drop this, and I'm gonna share the video from Father Nazario and what he found. Okay, just lock you. Bear with me 1 second. That's the same one. Again, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Get those likes up. Okay, this information is so beautiful. And it's so valuable for our people. All right, I'm just going to share my screen. Get this up. Okay, this is, speaking on the reports of what Father Nazario had found. And again, why is this important? You had a lot of scholars, like I was saying earlier, so-called scholars, that did their best to disprove these findings. You know what I mean? And this is something they continually do to us. They continually try to trash our records. You know what I mean? You read in the Bible, there was a time when they had burned our records. You know what I mean? You read through the book of Maccabees, when they were saying it was illegal for a Jew to profess to be a Jew. You know what I mean? To keep his culture, to keep Sabbath days. These things were illegal. They came into our temples and they destroyed our temples. They destroyed our records. This is not a new thing. You know what I mean? Book of Ecclesiastes says there's no new thing under the sun. These people have been trying to destroy us for, you know what I mean, from the beginning of our nation. You see what Esau tried to do with us, into the wilderness when we were trying to get to the promised land. You know what I mean? All throughout the Bible, Esau has always been an enemy to the children of Israel. You see what happened with people like Kyrie Irving. You know what I mean? All the brother did was post a link to a book that was being sold on Amazon. He posts a link that even hints to blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous being the children of Israel. And that man is fined millions of dollars, threatened to lose his contract, told he can no longer play basketball just for posting a link. You know what I mean? The amount of extreme extents that these people go to destroy us, you know what I mean? It would be hard pressed for a person to really understand it. You know what I mean? And if it wasn't for, different things being leaked as time, continually goes on, we wouldn't have all this information about how they try to destroy us. You can look up things like COINTELPRO and how the FBI themselves, they infiltrate the Black Party. They infiltrate every black organization. Not just black, it said they infiltrated every black, Hispanic, and indigenous organization. FBI themselves going, at great lengths to destroy us because they don't want us to know who we are. All right, let's get into this video a little bit.
Welcome to News 247. Let's get straight to the news. In the update on archaeological research in Puerto Rico, our island could have one of the most important archaeological finds made in America.
priest. Represented a type of writing associated.
Give me 1 second. I'm not sure why there's no sound on this. Let's see. I got something muted.
Welcome to News 247. Let's get straight to the news. In the update on archaeological research in Puerto Rico, our island.
Good night. We don't got no sound. Man, I tell you, if Satan isn't after us today, I don't know what else to say. Been having every kind of technological problem.
Could have one of the most important archaeological finds made in America. It involves an important collection of stones found in Guayanilla. To explain their importance, we are joined by archaeologist Reniel Rodriguez from the University of Puerto Rico in Hugo. We greet him and thank him for being here with us. Thank you for being here.
Well, what is this about? We have mentioned that they are stones. One might not necessarily identify that stones have great value. But why? What is the reason that gives them meaning? Well, at the end of the 19th century.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Is it not? It's on the screen, the sound's on there. All right, no sweat. We'll close this. We're gonna keep going. I'm not sure what's going on with this.
A priest named Father Nazario.
Ain't no sweat. All right, so basically, if I could sum that video up, let me see if I'll put the link in the chat. That's I don't know what's going on. What I'll do is I'll put the link to the video in the chat so that if anybody wants to check this out, they can take a look at it. But basically, you know, like I said, the scholars were trying to disprove, go to great lengths to disprove this information, but more information came out. More information came out that, you know, just further qualified those 800 stones of Father Nazario to be true. Okay, and that like I said in that article that we were reading from the Haifa University, you know, just seeing that, you know, all the studies that they're doing on these stones, they're seeing that these stones are authenticated. These stones are real. You know what I mean? This information is there. This is found in Puerto Rico itself. You know what I mean? And because of all the bullshit that we're taught in America, things like the Bering Strait, you know what I mean? That the indigenous people in North America came over some, you know, water that had frozen solid and made it to the New World. All of that is bullshit. Yeah, I mean, it's lucky. Let me pull that verse up, okay? Because this technology wants to, you know, wants to put a stop to this information, but there ain't nothing you can do to stop this information. Okay, I'm gonna go to the Apocrypha. All right. This is the book of Second Ezra, chapter 13 and verse 40. It said, Those are the 10 tribes. Well, let me jump up a bit for context. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and verse 38. It says, "And shall lay before them their evil thoughts and their torments, wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame. And he shall destroy them without labor by the law which is unto me. And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their land in the time of Hosea the king." Okay, who is Hosea the king? That's Hosea. These are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. What our oppressor, these Caucasians, didn't do was destroy our Bible. The dumbest thing that they could have done was give us this Bible. They tried to give us things like the slave Bible, where they would remove different passages from the Bible and they would give it to us. You know what I mean? They would tell us, slaves, obey your masters. You know what I mean? They took out the whole Old Testament. You know what I mean? I think they left some of the books of Psalms in there. You know what I mean? And they gave us pieces of this record. They should have burned the whole book. They should have never gave blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous this book. Because when we read through this book, we say, wait a minute, the 10 tribes of Israel at a time in history traveled over water into another land. It says, but they took this counsel among themselves that they should leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. So you're telling me the 10 tribes of Israel went over water into a land that no man had ever dwelt in before. That's in our records. That's in our history book. You know what I mean? They try to teach you that this Bible is some kind of fairy tale. They do that because, you know, Christianity teaches things like snakes can talk, that a snake can have a conversation, you know, good enough to convince a woman to disobey her God. That's what Christianity teaches. And you wonder why blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous are running out of the church, you know what I mean, by the thousands. Because they look at the Bible as some fairy tale. But then you have, you know what I mean, all this list in the Bible of, you know, different kings and different generations, you know what I mean, and different nations of what they were doing and how the children of Israel interacted with these different nations. How they interacted with Assyria and Persia and the Greeks and Babylon and all these different nations. And you start to say, wait a minute, Egypt was real. Slavery in Egypt happened. Slavery in Assyria happened. Slavery in Persia happened. And you had Semitic people or Shemitic people that were there. You read through the book of Maccabees and you see, you know, the Greeks starting to take over the whole known world. And you start to see the Greeks' first interaction with the children of Israel. And you start to say, wait a minute, there's historical references in this book. So is this Bible a book of, you know, fairy tales, or is it a history book? Which one is it? People have a tough time, you know what I mean, coming to that conclusion because of Christianity. But when you read the Bible, it says this is the book of the law. This is the book of different wars. This is the book of the generations of so and so. This is a book of a family tree, a family lineage. This is the book of law and order, how to run a society. This isn't a book of fairy tales. And when you can shake off that Christian mindset that this book is, flying dragons and a whole bunch of bullshit, you know what I mean? And you start to look at the practicality of the Bible. Yeah, I mean, you can better understand that this is a history book. And we're reading our history. We're reading the history of these 10 tribes that made it into a land that nobody had ever lived in before. And it says that but they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelled. Verse 42, that they might there keep their statutes. So these tribes, the 10 tribes of Israel, they wanted to be left alone to keep their statutes, to keep their customs, which they never kept in their own land. It says, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. So, you know what I mean? This is telling you a time in history when they traveled. It's telling you a time in history, you know what I mean, when they left Assyria. They're telling you the time frame. You know what I mean? We have different archaeology, that proves that who is it? Proves that King Solomon was real. Okay, what were those stones called? You can look at different stones like the Moabite stones, the Dan Steli stones. Okay, there's different archaeology, you know what I mean, that shows that the nation of Israel was real, that the house of David was real. You know what I mean? That all these different kings were real. Okay, I can't remember the name of the one that speaks on King Solomon. Okay, they found the city where King Hosea was. You know what I mean? And the tunnels they found with the Lashuan Quadash written all over the tunnels. So much of this archaeology is out there. You know what I mean? And you can do a simple, Google search and ask AI or ask Google, you know what I mean? Show me all the archaeology that proves the Bible to be real. Give me the 20 best pieces of archaeology that proves the Bible to be real. And you will be mind blown of all the archaeology that is out there. There's no shadow of a doubt that these are historical, people, historical references and times. You understand? The Bible is the greatest history book that mankind has ever known. It is, you know what I mean? It is fact right down to the T. This book, it is, you know what I mean? What's that word? Not consistent, but it's perfect. You know what I mean? There's no error in the Bible. All of these historical references are true. When it says that these 10 tribes were carried away captive over a water, you know what I mean, to a land where no man had ever dwelt, believe that. Don't believe, you know what I mean, things outside of this book, things outside of this Bible. This is your source for information. And it says in Deuteronomy, ask your forefathers and they will tell you. Ask Ezra. Ezra will tell you your history. Ezra will tell you how it is we should be living. You know what I mean? And so as we start, looking at different archaeological finds, we're like, wait a minute, these 800 stones are found in Puerto Rico. That lines up perfectly with the Bible. That lines up perfectly with Ezra. You know what I mean? Let's see if I can pull this up, because like I said, technology is just messing with me today. That video was going to go into some good information, but one of the things they had found on the stones was, all over the stones was a city that was in the land and the borders of Ephraim. Let's see if I can pull that up. Let me read. It says, the Father Nazario stones, also known as Aguela, are a collection of over 800, approximately 348, located by modern researchers. Serpentine stones discovered in Guayanilla, Puerto Rico, in the 19th century by Father Nazario. I want to see the part on, let me go down a bit. Let me see. Because what they had found on these stones was Ephraim written all over the stones. Let's see if I can find that. They had on the stones, I believe it was called Wanoa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So it says, in the context of Father Nazario's stones, Wanoa is another biblical name Father Nazario claimed to identify within the inscriptions, further supporting this theory that the Taino were descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And I'm going to pull up in the scripture, I believe it's in Judges. There's a verse that speaks on the city of Wanoa. Let's see if this is it right here. Joshua 16 and verse 6. I believe that was it right there. Joshua chapter 16 in the KJV. Let's see if that's the verse in KJV. It says, and the border went out toward the sea of Macmetha on the north side, and the border went about eastward unto Shiloh, and passed by it on the east to Wanoa. Okay, so there's this name. Let me see on my phone. Let's pull it up in the Hebrew. Okay. Let me get this really quick. This is Joshua chapter 6 and verse 6. Okay, or Joshua chapter 16 and verse 6. Okay, and this is a city that was inside of Ephraim. Okay, this is Joshua chapter 16 and verse 4. It says, so the children of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim took their inheritance, and the border of the children of Ephraim according to their families was thus. Even the border of their inheritance on the east side was Atarothadar unto Bethoron. The upper and the border went out toward the sea of Macmetha on the north side, and the border went up about eastward unto Shiloh, and passed by it on the east to Jonahoa. Okay, this is Joshua chapter 16 and verse 6. So this Genoa, which in the Hebrew, let me say this in Hebrew, this is Yana This is Yanawaha. Yanawaha in the Hebrew, okay? Or Genoa. This was found written all over the stones. It says the Strong's definition, quiet Genoa or Janaka, a place in Palestine, Genoa, Janaha, a place apparently in the north of Galilee and Naphtali, taken by Tiglath-Pileser in his first incursion into Palestine. Okay, so this city right here, it says it was by the east to Genoa. This is right, in the inheritance of the tribe of Ephraim. Okay, right from the tribe of Ephraim. This is their inheritance. This is their land. And Father Nazario found on these stones. Let me read that again. It says, in the context of the Father Nazario stones, Wanoa is another biblical name Father Nazario claimed to identify within the inscriptions, further supporting this theory that the Taino were descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Do you understand in 1969 that the ISUPK said that the tribe of Ephraim are the Puerto Ricans? (1969). This is before these stones are found. Brother in our school has a vision, and he's having a vision of who the 12 tribes of Israel are. And he brings it to the school, and the school starts looking through the Bible, and they're saying, yeah, this vision matches these records perfectly. That's why it's such a disgrace to see, different Israelite groups like the IUIC walk around with this 12 tribes chart, you know what I mean, and not representing the ISUPK, not being with the brothers that gave them this knowledge. You see different Israelite groups walking around with this 12 tribes chart, you know what I mean, not being under the banner of the ISUPK. This knowledge and wisdom came right from here. We, you know what I mean, our elders broke down Genesis chapter 49. They broke down where, the different tribes would be in the last days. You know what I mean? It broke down the spirit of these tribes in the last days. Let me jump there really quick. This is Genesis chapter 49 and verse 1. And it says, and Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. We can ask our forefather Moses. We can read the scriptures in the book of Genesis to find out what would happen to the 12 tribes of Israel in the last days. Every Christian pastor in the world would tell you that we're in the last days today. You know what I mean? Jacob said, this is what would befall you in the last days. And you read on down, verse 3, what would happen to Reuben. You know what I mean? Verse 5, Simeon. Verse 8, Judah. You know what I mean? 13, Zebulun. All the 12 tribes are listed inside of that. You know what I mean? Even speaking on Dan, you know what I mean? Speaking on all the tribes of Israel and what would befall them. This is the only knowledge that we need. The only knowledge we need is to get in the ISUPK, come to class, and learn this Bible. We don't need Father Nazario stones to know that the tribe of Ephraim are the so-called Puerto Ricans. But things like this, they help. You know what I mean? This might open the eyes to a stubborn man. Captain Katazar has the baddest 12 tribes chart breakdown that you could ever see. Some of the greatest information that you'll ever hear. And the only thing we need is this Bible. Okay? And so you have things like these Father Nazario stones come out. All this does is further prove that the ISUPK is right. That the ISUPK knows the Bible and you don't. That you need the ISUPK, that you need these classes to learn the wisdom of your culture, to learn the wisdom of this Bible. It says in Deuteronomy that if blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous would keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, that we would be seen as a wise and understanding people. We become wise when we follow the Bible. We become wise when we follow these records. We don't need these different, universities to prove or disprove the Father Nazario's stones and this archaeology that has been found. It is helpful, but it is not needed. I'm going to jump to the book of Corinthians. The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 19. It says, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God." The wisdom of this world is foolish. You got to understand that, black man, Hispanic man, indigenous man. Like sometimes we want to think we're so smart that we just got it all together, that we know everything. Most High is saying the wisdom of this world is foolish. It doesn't matter how many different universities, authenticate these stones. That information, we don't need that. The only thing we need is the wisdom of the Bible, wisdom of the Most High. This book, these records were, written by the paraphrasing, by men that were, or holy men that were inspired by God. Holy men that were moved by the Spirit to write down what it is the Most High wanted blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous to know, wanted the children of Israel to know. That's why when you read through the Bible, every prophet is an Israelite. What advantage has a Jew? To them were committed the oracles of God. Christ, a black man from the tribe of Judah. Paul, a brother from a black man from the tribe of Benjamin, so-called Jamaican today. You know what I mean? All the different prophets in the Old Testament, all children of Israel, every single one of them. And we get the wisdom of the Most High through these holy men that recorded his instructions for us. It says the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. You do some dumb shit like think you're smarter than the Most High. It says he taketh the wise in their craftiness. See, these different Israelite groups who, I seen this one Israelite group battle or try to debate Cap Katazah on the 12 tribes chart. And he's bringing up information how, well, the majority of the slaves were brought to Brazil. The majority of the slaves that came from Africa were brought to Brazil. And so that must be the tribe of Judah. he's thinking or they're thinking in their carnal minds how to make sense of, where these people are today. Not understanding in the book of Genesis, it gives you the spirit of Judah. Genesis chapter 49, it tells you the spirit of Judah. You know what I mean? Jump to, let me go Genesis 49. Where does it speak on Judah? It's Genesis 49 and verse 8. It says, Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. So if Judah's in the neck of their enemies, you got to think of, who is a people that is in the neck of their enemies. You know what I mean? You can think of it literally. You can think of it figuratively as a parable. You know what I mean? As a figure of speech. And I can come up with this, you know what I mean? I can see this vision of George Floyd having his oppressor's knee on his neck. I see this image of Judah, I see this nation of people living amongst their oppressors. They're in the neck of their enemies. So no matter what, history or archaeology you say or find, if that doesn't match up with Genesis 49, I'm not believing that shit. Right? It says, Judah, thou art whom thy brethren shall praise. Understand, blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we praise the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah is well known for so many accomplishments, for doing so many great things on this earth. Being a people that we look up to, being a people that, has so much influence on us. It says, thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey. My son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? You know what I mean? And we're waiting for the tribe of Judah to get roused up. You know what I mean? It's so hard, you know what I mean, to light a fire under the black man inside of America's ass. It's so hard to rouse him up. And the day he does, good night. You see blacks inside of America, stand up and rise up and do something great on this earth, good luck to this whole world. You know what I mean? Nobody is going to stop Judah. It says, verse 10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Look at what Christ did, Yahushua in the Hebrew. Christ is a black man from the tribe of Judah. That's their role on this earth. To rule, to be a king over the nation of Israel. That's exactly what the spirit of Christ that he had. And there are no greater people on this earth than the tribe of Judah, than the black man inside of America. All throughout the Bible, it speaks on Judah's greatness. And you start to think, of everything that Judah invented. You start to think about everything Judah has accomplished on this earth. I wouldn't care what archaeology you find. I can see the spirit of the black man inside of America. And that's the things that we have to go off of. This says the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. You understand? Let me jump to We got one more verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Chapter 12 and verse. Let's see. Ecclesiastes 12. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 12. It says, "And further, by these my son be admonished, of making many books there is no end, and much study is weariness of the flesh." So as blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we can study all day long outside the Bible. And we can find some good information. You understand? We can find good information. We can find Father Nazario stones. And that is good information, but it is a weariness of the flesh. It can get tiring. It gets tiring. You know what I mean? I teach this history class every Monday. Well, some of the problems I had today, I was doing research on the different history and archaeology of our people, and I think I downloaded some malware or some virus that has mashed up my my microphone and my camera. You know what I mean? This stuff is weariness. It is tiring. It would be so much easier to just read the damn Bible. You know what I mean? Stay in the Bible. Stay in this book, because the wisdom of the world is foolish, but the wisdom of the Most High, you know what I mean? That is a jewel. That is a gem. Christ said, "Don't cast your pearls to swine." What is your pearls? That's your laws, statutes, and commandments. That's your culture, black man. That's these records, this Bible, these scriptures. These are your pearls. This is your wisdom. This is your jewel. This Bible is what's important. This Bible is what's valuable. You see what I'm saying? And that's the only thing that we need. But, you know what I mean? Finding something like these, these different archaeological finds, you know what I mean? It just helps show our people that the wisdom of the Most High is always right, has always been right. You know what I mean? You can't debate this archaeology. We find it and we're like, damn, wait a minute. We gotta to take a second look at who these people were in Puerto Rico before being colonized. We gotta look at their language and say, where did this come from? Look at their culture and say, you know what I mean? Why were they practicing the different things that they were? And you will see that the Puerto Ricans are, without a shadow of a doubt, the tribe of Ephraim. You will see that the ISUPK is undefeated. You will see that the Lord is undefeated. All right, that's the only wisdom that we need. And so with that, let me take a look at some of these comments. All right, Aisha Banath, Heaven 555, Carolyn Radsville, Tyree, the water, Maria checking in. Again, Kwamada, Sister Kwamada, shout out to everybody who tuned in. All right, make sure we like, share, subscribe, get those likes up, share this class. All right, make sure you tune into Black Watch tonight. Okay, tune into the Generals. They're gonna be live in about 5 minutes. All right, we can jump over there. With that, I'm gonna close the class. The water to everybody who tuned in. Yahweh Shemir Shabbat, a thumb to the brothers. Yahweh Shemal, a thumb by Shemir Shai to all the sisters. Shalom, Israel.
Hey, listen, brothers and sisters, man. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, man. Subscribe to this channel. And also, please, go to isubk.com and pay your tithe. Drop me some cash so we can move around this planet like we need to, man, and do the things we need to do.
They're one West. They're one West. They're one West. They're